welcome to the deep dive. So you've shared this pretty detailed report on the global personal mobility devices market for 2025.
I did, yes. It's quite comprehensive.
And our goal today really is to kind of sift through it all, pull out the most important bits, the interesting insights, basically give everyone a shortcut to understanding what's going on in this space.
Exactly. A shortcut to getting up to speed. Because it's not just about where the market is now. It's really about the growth story here.
Right.
The report projects the global market size will hit USD 13,642 million in 2025.
Okay.
But the really eye-catching figure is where it's headed. It's expected to climb to nearly $24,150 million by 2033.
Oh, it's a big jump.
It is. That's a compound annual growth rate, a CAGR, of 7.40%. That really tells you there's some serious momentum here.
A 7.4% CAGR.
Yeah, that definitely suggests some powerful forces are pushing this forward. What are the main drivers the report points to?
Well, it's really a mix of big demographic and health trends happening globally. A huge factor is the aging population worldwide. Makes sense. More older folks needing help getting around.
Precisely. As people live longer, the need for devices that help them stay independent and mobile it naturally goes up.
That's a fundamental shift, for sure. But it's not just about getting older, is it? The report mentioned other factors, too.
Oh, absolutely. There's also the increasing prevalence of disabilities and chronic conditions. Things like arthritis, diabetes, these sadly impact mobility for lots of people, not just the elderly.
Right.
And then you add in supportive government policies in many places, plus increased healthcare spending overall on mobility aids. It all creates a more, let's say, fertile ground for market growth.
Okay. Now, usually on the deep dive, as listeners know, we pull from different articles, research, your own notes.
Right, a mix of sources.
Yeah. Today, though, we're really zeroing in on this one specific market report you've provided. We want to make sure we extract all the crucial stuff from it clearly. So, okay, let's dive into that global overview.
Right. So, as we said, $13.6 billion in 2025, growing at 7.4% annually through 2033. But, the global number only tells part of the story. We need to see where that money actually is, geographically speaking.
Okay, the regional breakdown.
Exactly. In 2025, North America is the leader. It holds the biggest share, over 40% of the total global revenue.
Over 40%. Wow. What does that look like in dollar terms?
That translates to about USD 5,047 million, so a very significant chunk.
That is a commanding position. So who's next? Europe.
Yep, Europe comes in second, holding over 30% of the market. That's around USD 3,956 million for 2025.
Okay, so North America and Europe together are what, almost 3/4 of the market?
Pretty much, yeah. After Europe, you've got the Asia-Pacific region, APAC. They hold about 23% share, which is roughly USD 3,274 million in 2025.
And the rest? South America, Middle East, Africa.
So South America accounts for a bit over 5%, around $518 million. The Middle East is smaller, around 2%, maybe $545 million. And Africa holds about 1% of the global market, roughly $300 million in 2025.
Okay, so North America and Europe are definitely the dominant players right now. But you mentioned growth earlier. Does the projected growth change that picture much?
Ah, yes, that's where it gets really interesting. Because the growth rates aren't uniform. North America, despite being the biggest now, has a projected CAGR of 5.9% between 2025 and 2033.
Still decent growth, but maybe not the fastest.
Exactly. Europe's growth is projected a bit stronger at 6.4%. But the real standout, the region expected to grow the fastest, is Asia-Pacific.
Oh, really? What's their projected CGR?
A remarkable 10.1%.
10%. Okay, that is significant. If you're looking at future potential, that number really jumps out. What about the others?
South America is expected to grow at 8.1%, the Middle East at 8.7%, and Africa at 7.7%. So all showing healthy expansion, But that double-digit growth in APAC, it really signals a potential major shift in the global market landscape over the next decade or so.
Fascinating. Okay, so we have the where and the how fast. Let's dig a bit deeper now into the why, the growth drivers you touched on.
Right, and that aging global population is just fundamental. As life expectancy goes up everywhere, you inevitably see more age-related mobility issues. That directly fuels demand for wheelchairs, walkers, scooters, you name it.
And you mentioned it's not just age. The report also stresses disabilities and chronic diseases, right?
Absolutely. Things like arthritis, MS, recovery from injuries. These create significant need for personal mobility devices across all age groups, really. And don't forget the impact of improving healthcare infrastructure.
How does that connect?
Well, better access to healthcare often means earlier diagnosis of conditions that affect mobility.
Yeah.
It also means mobility aids are more likely to be integrated into treatment plans, rehabilitation strategies. So, more adoption.
Makes sense. Now, are there any brakes on this growth? Any headwinds the report mentions? Market restraints?
Yes, definitely. A key one is simply the cost. These personal mobility devices can be very expensive.
Yeah, I can imagine.
For a lot of people, that's a major financial hurdle. It can limit accessibility, unfortunately. Another point is things like battery life and sometimes technological limitations on certain devices.
Practical stuff, like how far can I go on this scooter? Does it have the features I need?
Exactly. Users might hesitate if a device's battery doesn't last long enough for their needs or if it feels, technologically outdated.
Okay. Hopefully technology keeps improving to address those, which actually leads nicely into emerging trends. The report highlights tech advancements, doesn't it?
No, massively. This is a really exciting area. The pace of technological innovation is, frankly, quite rapid. We're seeing more and more integration of smart features.
Like what kind of smart features?
Think IoT connectivity, so devices can communicate data, maybe for remote monitoring or diagnostics. Huge improvements in battery efficiency and lifespan, too. Imagine electric wheelchairs or scooters that not only go much further on a charge, but also use, say, AI for smarter navigation or obstacle avoidance.
Wow, AI in wheelchairs.
And
That's
it's,
heading towards like semi-autonomous mobility.
in some ways, yeah, enhancing safety and user-friendliness through tech. That's the direction things are moving.
And is it just about the electronics inside? Or other kinds of innovation too?
No, it's broader than that. There's also a big push for product diversification and innovation in design and materials.
Okay.
Manufacturers are constantly investing in R&D. They want to make devices that are lighter, more ergonomic, easier to use, and even more environmentally friendly.
Eco-friendly materials. Interesting.
Yes, using sustainable materials is becoming more of a focus. So the market's not just getting bigger, it's getting smarter and, well, better designed.
Okay, so let's switch gears slightly and look at how the market breaks down by product type. What does the report say there?
Right, so the report segments the market. Two key segments highlighted are medical mobility aids and ambulatory devices, and medical furniture and bathroom safety products.
Now, which one's bigger right now?
The first one, medical mobility aids and ambulatory devices. That holds the largest share currently.
And that includes things like
Wheelchairs, both manual and powered. Mobility scooters, walkers, canes, crutches. Basically the core devices people think of for getting around.
And why is that segment dominant? Just sheer volume.
Pretty much. The huge demand driven by the aging population and those rising rates of mobility conditions we talked about, it all flows into this core segment.
Okay. What about the other segment you mentioned? Medical furniture and bathroom safety.
And this is interesting. That segment is identified as the one with the highest growth rate.
Faster growth than wheelchairs and scooters. Why is that?
It ties into a major social trend, aging in place.
Right, people wanting to stay in their own homes longer.
Exactly. Instead of moving to assisted living, more seniors want to adapt their homes. This drives demand for things like patient lifts, powered ones, stand-up lifts, overhead track lifts.
Things to help move people within the home.
Yes, and stair lifts for indoors and outdoors. Medical beds, like hospital-style beds for home use. Grab bars, railings, special commodes, shower chairs. All that stuff that makes a home safer and more functional for someone with mobility challenges.
And I guess the pandemic probably boosted that too, with more focus on home health care.
Absolutely. The report notes that COVID-19 accelerated the shift towards home healthcare solutions, which definitely gave this segment an extra push.
It's really interesting how these broad societal shifts directly shape demand for specific products. Okay, let's zoom in now on those regional details, starting with North America, the biggest market.
Right. So North America, we said, was just over $5 billion in 2025, with that 5.9% projected CAGR. Within that, the U.S. is the giant.
Makes sense.
The U.S. market alone is estimated at nearly $4 billion in 2025, USD $382.51 million, to be precise, growing at 5.7% CAGR. And the drivers there are primarily that aging population and the high prevalence of disabilities.
Okay, what about Canada and Mexico? How do they fit in?
Canada's market is substantial, too, around $606 million USD in 2025, and actually growing a bit faster than the U.S. at 6.7% CAGR. That's helped by their strong healthcare system and various government disability programs.
Right.
Mexico is estimated around 459 million USD in 2025, with a 6.4% CAGR.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, across North America, there's growing awareness and advocacy around mobility aids and accessibility issues, which also helps the market.
Okay, solid picture for North America. Let's hop across the Atlantic to Europe.
Europe's the second largest market, remember, just under $4 billion, USD 956.18 million in 2025, with a projected growth of 6.4% CAGR.
And within Europe, which countries are key?
Well, Germany actually has the largest single market in Europe, estimated at about 783 million USD in 2025, growing at 6.6%. They benefit from really good insurance coverage for these devices and a strong domestic manufacturing base.
Interesting. What about the UK?
The UK is also significant, around 665 million USD in 2025, and growing faster than Germany actually at 7.2% CAGR. That's boosted by NHS funding and a strong focus on independent living solutions.
Any other major players in Europe?
Yeah, France is notable, around 364 million, growing at 5.6%. Italy, about 340 million, growing at 5.8%. And Russia is quite large too, over 613 million, though growing a bit slower at 5.4%. Spain, Sweden, they're also important markets. Plus, Europe is home to many leading manufacturers who are constantly innovating.
Okay. Now, for the region you highlighted for its growth potential, Asia Pacific.
Yes, APAC, market size around 3.3 billion USD in 2025, but with that really impressive 10.1% projected CAGR.
And who leads the pack in APAC?
China. China is the largest market by far. About 1.4 billion USD, 1,375 million in 2025, growing at a strong 9.6%. They've made huge investments in elderly care infrastructure, which supports this.
Right. And you mentioned one country with particularly high growth.
India, yes. While its current market size is smaller, around 327 million USD in 2025, its projected CAGR is the highest mentioned in the report for any country, 12.0%.
12%. What's driving that surge in India?
Primarily the rising incidence of conditions like arthritis and other mobility disorders. There's just a rapidly growing need.
That's definitely one to watch. What about other established APAC markets? Japan, South Korea.
Yep, both are significant. Japan is around 452 million USD, growing at 8.6%. South Korea is about 393 million, growing even faster at 9.2%. And a broader factor across APAC is rapid urbanization.
How does urbanization play into it?
Well, dense cities can create new mobility challenges, especially for people with physical limitations. This increases the need for personal mobility devices to navigate urban environments.
Interesting connection. Okay, let's move south America.
South America.
Yeah.
A smaller market overall, about 518 million USD in 2025, but with solid growth projected at 8.1% CAGR.
And the main market there, Brazil.
Brazil is the largest, yes, around 222 million USD, growing at 8.7%. That's largely driven by a rise in chronic diseases linked to mobility issues. Argentina is next, about 87 million, but with a slightly higher growth rate of 9.0%, helped by healthcare investments and awareness campaigns.
Any unique factors in South America?
One interesting trend mentioned is medical tourism. People traveling to South American countries for healthcare can sometimes boost demand for short-term or even long-term mobility aids.
Ah, okay. Now, the Middle East.
Middle East market is estimated around 546 million USD in 2025, growing strongly at 8.7% CAGR. Saudi Arabia is the biggest player here.
How big?
About 192 million USD, projected to grow at 9.0%. The UAE is also significant, around 112 million, with a slightly higher growth rate of 9.2%.
And what are the specific drivers there? Similar to elsewhere?
Partly similar, yes, aging, healthcare improvements, but the report also notes, unfortunately, that higher rates of traffic accidents and conflict-related injuries in parts of the region contribute to the demand for mobility devices.
Right, a sobering factor. Okay, finally, let's touch on Africa.
Africa, the smallest regional market currently, around 300 million USD in 2025, but still projected to grow at a healthy 7.7% CAGR. South Africa is the largest market within the continent.
And its size?
About 106 million USD, growing at 8.6%. Across Africa, international aid organizations and various government initiatives are playing a key role in trying to expand access to these essential devices.
So it's clear that while the starting points vary hugely, there's growth pretty much everywhere, with APAC really leading the charge in terms of pace. Now, the report briefly touched on the competitive landscape, too.
Yes, just a snippet, really, reinforcing that innovation point we discussed. Companies are heavily investing in R&D.
You make things smarter, More user-friendly.
Exactly. Integrating smart features, AI, improving efficiency. The report mentions an example, though. It's from 2021, so slightly before this report's main focus, Rollins International, launching their role as Flex 2 rollator. It just illustrates that ongoing drive for better products, better user experience, which is constantly shaping the competitive field.
Right. Constant improvement is key. Okay, so if we were to sort of wrap this all up, boil down this deep dive into the report, what are the absolute key takeaways?
I'd say first, this is a big, robust global market already, and it's set for really substantial growth going from, what, 13.6 billion USD in 2025 to over 24 billion by 2033. That 7.4% CAGR is significant.
Driven by some powerful long-term trends.
Absolutely. Those fundamental demographic shifts, the aging population, more chronic conditions, disabilities, they aren't going away. Plus, you have technology acting as a major accelerator, making devices better and more appealing.
And that trend towards aging in place.
Yes, that's huge, driving growth in home-based solutions. And then regionally, while North America and Europe are the current heavyweights, keep a very close eye on Asia-Pacific. Its growth trajectory is really reshaping the global balance.
So a dynamic market with lots of moving parts, but definitely trending upwards.
That's the picture, yes. A really vital market impacting millions of lives.
It certainly is. And that brings us to a final thought to leave our listeners with. As this market keeps growing, and hopefully access to these mobility devices becomes more widespread, think about the ripple effects. How might our cities, our communities, our social structures need to change?
Interesting question.
Could we see, urban planning needing a serious rethink, a much stronger push for truly inclusive design everywhere? And what could this mean for individual independence, for social participation, for potentially millions more people in the coming years?
Yeah, the broader societal implications are definitely worth pondering. It goes way beyond just the market figures.
Absolutely. Something to mull over. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.